If you've followed the channel now for any length of time, sometimes I like to kind of take a moment and look into the future and think about how trends might affect both retro gaming and modern gaming. And today I was thinking about how the cryptocurrency revolution, if you want to call it that, might play out or at least affect the video game hobby. And I think at the core of cryptocurrency, at the core of this sort of new digital revolution, is a concept of digital scarcity. And I don't think that concept is foreign to video games. And I think, recently we've seen video game companies trying to create mechanisms of value or use digital scarcity as a mechanism of value creation. So, what do I mean by that? Well, limited run games. I think limited run games, while they're not necessarily trading in digital scarcity, their business model makes certain digital assets physically scarce. So, you can, to my knowledge, download any of the games that limited run games offers, but they package those digital assets physically in a limited run capacity. And a lot of people kind of love or hate them, but I think they're here to stay, and they're not the only ones who have done that. More recently, Nintendo has created a model of actual digital scarcity, particularly with the Super Mario 3D All-Stars package that released, I think, in September of 2020. So what that was an item, a collection of games that was itself digitally scarce. It's apparently only going to be on the Nintendo eShop until March, and it is also physically scarce. The physical release will only be available until March. And it seems like these are digital assets that are trying to simulate something. What is that something? Well, retro game collecting, that sort of fear of missing out mentality, or perhaps in a certain sense, a fear of losing out on video game nostalgia. So it got me thinking, what is the role, what is the standing of retro games in a market where perhaps digital games will become incredibly scarce? And I think, in a certain sense, the collecting mentality will just shift to getting those digital assets in whatever physical container they take. So, for example, if I've downloaded a game that is actually digitally scarce and I still have that on my Switch, I have that on my PlayStation 4, I can actually sell the hardware at a premium. And we've seen that actually, I believe, with that PT game, which I don't know the details. It was kind of like a Resident Evil, Hideo Kojima, I believe, game, and then it was kind of the plug was pulled on it, and if you had it on your PlayStation 4, suddenly the PlayStation 4 became very valuable. There have been other examples of games that don't have a physical release. I recall hearing that the Sega, it was like the new release of Afterburner. I think it was called Afterburner Climax. That hasn't been available anywhere. So I've heard of people saying, I'll give you, if you have that on your PlayStation 3, it's maybe worth something more. So, but I would go kind of a step further and say that retro gaming and your physical game collection, if you look at it, is really, a scarce digital asset in the sense that they're decaying digital assets. And I think for a while now, the gold standard in some aspects of the retro gaming community has been the authentic experience of playing these games on functioning hardware. So in a hyper speculative community, or in a hyper speculative age, really, where people are searching for a kind of authentic experience, it might so happen that the retro game collection, the person that has the functioning original hardware with the physical game, which is a form of a digital asset that hasn't decayed yet. In other words, your Nintendo cartridge is still working. that there may actually be a premium paid to have that experience, even if those games are available digitally. I think I can speak for a lot of retro gamers when I say that there is nothing that replicates the experience of physical hardware. Now, I'm not a person who's going to spend thousands of dollars to replicate that experience. I think I'm not going to spend $500 on a game, say for the Sega Saturn. Take your pick of whatever super rare, super expensive Sega Saturn game. I will just either not play it or play a re-release like the Panzer Dragoon thing that came out. Of course, not Panzer Dragoon Saga, but when you think back to the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, those games can be emulated. And while I don't have the wonderful feel of the Super Famicom, Super NES controller, I'm pretty happy just playing those games on emulation. But you'll have people who I think are passionate enough and who have kind of extra income and might be willing to still pay a premium to get that physical experience. Plus, you have console modding and things like that. Now some of that is like an ODE drive where you can still have the physical console, but you have all the games loaded in. That's another something from the Saturn and Dreamcast community. So, it's a very niche market, that someone who's going to, pay a premium for those, digital assets, decaying digital assets in physical form. But in a certain sense, we could see retro gaming as the starting point for the kind of scarcity that will just ramp up when it's purely digital. So then we come to the kind of question of blockchain and how could blockchain technology be integrated into video games. Now, I'm going to admit I am kind of a novice in that space. I've kind of forced myself to pay attention to it. So what I'm saying here is perhaps superficial, but at least as I was kind of doing some chores today and thinking about this topic, a couple things stood out. So I think blockchain technology integrated into video games is going to become a form of increasing engagement, but it's still going to work, again, as a mechanism of digital scarcity. Oh, what do I mean by that? Well, I think kind of the basic thing is that as gaming, modern gaming moves into the future, we might actually see a kind of crypto token payment for achievements. So, the achievement system, to me, I've never really understood it. I've never cared about the achievements that I get when playing. I've never even looked at what my total balance of achievements are. It just seems like some kind of extraneous thing that was built in to games back in the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era. But you could think of a kind of gamer crypto that has some value, that has some tradable exchange value, whether that's more broadly in, say, like a PlayStation Store, or even beyond that. And if you game well enough, and if you're kind of like a trophy hunter, perhaps, maybe you can earn some of this cryptocurrency, and it will actually have some real-world value. And so your engagement will be driven by the fact that there is a tangible monetary reward attached to gaming. And I think that mentality of a tangible reward is going to be important moving forward. If you look at gaming today, you look at a lot of social networking, online interactions, it seems to me that what we're doing is we're figuring out new ways to monetize personal time. So we'll take the model of Twitch, for example. Twitch, if I have a sufficient number of followers, if I'm a personality that people want to follow, I'm reasonably good at certain games, or I sort of play them in a humorous way, why would I play video games personally or alone or just on the couch with somebody when I could broadcast that and get some financial benefit? Maybe someone's sending me bits or donations or super chats or whatever they do. So I think the integration of cryptocurrency into games is going to kind of take that mentality to the masses. Maybe I don't have a following. Maybe I can't really, earn anything for my time that I invest in video games, but if I can get some digital asset that's worth something out of it, I'll be more engaged. You can push that mentality a little further. So imagine, for example, a general ledger that tracks your skill and achievement as a player across platforms, across games, across platforms, and that is, sort of verified out there on the blockchain. So now what you're doing is you're creating a record of skill, and that's a form of human capital that could have some value. And it's a little bit more of a democratic process. If I am great at a particular video game, but I don't have a following and I can't monetize my time on social networking, maybe if I can say, hey, look at this, however that verified ledger will look, look at my verified achievements. I'm a great player of Street Fighter, or, I'm objectively the best Fortnite player in the world. I can turn that notoriety, I can turn, that achievement into money, into something that personally benefits me. So we're already seeing video games kind of contributing to human capital development in the sense of you're seeing colleges having esport teams where video games, if taken seriously, are not just something you do in your parents' basement to pass the time. You're not some lonely gaming otaku. There is a reward for your skill, and I kind of see blockchain as potentially contributing to that. And lastly, I just kind of discovered as you kind of read up about, what the future of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology might be doing generally, I found a concept that I think might be very interesting for games, and that's something called the NFT, the non-fungible token, which is a, digital asset, a digital product that cannot be copied. Apparently there was a game called Crypto Kitties that offered something along those lines, and some of those assets have become really valuable collector's items in the digital space. I think the NBA is doing something with, for lack of a better term, a kind of digital basketball card asset, and it exists on the chain. You can track ownership, and there's only one of them. So for an obsessive gaming collector, you could kind of think about the impact that might have. So imagine, for example, there is a new Nintendo release, and they say, there's going to be 5 original Miyamoto artworks, hand-drawn Miyamoto artworks, that will be packaged as an NFT and, will be earned either as random drops in the game or as a skill-based reward. And you can take those NFTs and sell them on any number of blockchain exchanges. So you could, have them in your collection and proudly display them, maybe next to your avatar on the Switch, if we still have those Miis. I don't know. I don't play the Switch all that much. Or you can just take them out to some kind of marketplace for digital art assets and sell it for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, or who knows how much, because there's only one of this kind of token. So again, that's digital scarcity that I think the obsessive collector would gravitate towards. But, you could also see something like that, as a less scarce but tradable asset that rewards, say, indie developers. So, there's this kind of token system. There's, many different tokens, many different drops that I could get in a game. And if I choose to sell them, each time they're sold on, the development studio gets a little chunk of the sale to support their efforts. Or on the other hand, you can, say, create your own NFTs based on the characters of a game and then sell those on. So I kind of see that as a potential future for video game collecting. Not in collecting in the sense that we know it, those of us who have kind of grown up in the YouTube retro gaming movement. But I do think that, that is going to be an aspect of our future. I don't think it's going to necessarily replace, the rare physical game, the rare unopened game. Like I said, I think that's going to still have value because it's a scarce and decaying asset in and of itself. But as a means of engagement, I think this could be the future. Now, I'm not saying that this is good or bad, and certainly companies like EA and Activision and sort of the huge corporate villains of the video game world could potentially use this kind of technology to the detriment of consumers. But it's a kind of interesting thing to think about nonetheless, to just sort of muse about on a lonely Saturday. So let me know what you guys think. Am I just, do I just have my head in the clouds, or do you see practical applications for new forms of digital scarcity and the blockchain in the future of gaming?